I have over here this is the kavitz that Rebbe gave out 30 years ago tonight, and I was just looking through it. So Rabbi Keach said that he was the only one who was a shliach from the Rebbetzin. So here you have in this kavitz the sicha from the Rebbe to the first kinnis hashluchas, the second kinnis hashluchas olami, actually the first. And the Rebbe speaks over there about the shluchas, and the Rebbe says that the shluchas are the shluchas of Kol Nishei Yisrael. And in the Halacha 60 says, Kelu miyuchad hanoshim shel tzaddikim nisi Yisrael. So the shluchas from the wives of the tzaddikim. And then in order, the Rebbe says, Lehei ma'ashayches as cholos hakinus b'yim ha'yortzeit telulo sherabonis as sekonis was chayim mushke shbasei d'chusyagun leinu. Meaning that all the shluchim and the shluchas are shluchim of the Rebbe and shluchim of the Rebbetzin. I want to begin by speaking about going back a little bit before the connection that my shver had with the Rebbe, shver Dr. Moshe Feldman, it was 1976, Tavshin Lamed Zayin, and my wife and her family, the in-laws, they lived in the Bronx, and they came home Simchas Torah by night after 10 minutes at kafus, and they said, no, this cannot continue. They were 10 minutes of kafum, we get the haim, they asked, we get shlafim. They decided next year, we're going to have to be by the Rebbe. They were still becoming more and more mekutiv to the Rebbe, to Lubavitch. They were close to Rabbi Mordechai Olter and his wife, Allah Shalom. This was after they got to know Rabbi Zalman Posner and his wife, Allah Shalom. So for Tavshel Lamed Ches, they rented the basement of Rabbi Metzger, Lang Stark, and his wife. And they did in the month of Tishrei. I remember this clearly, Lamed Ches, before Bar Mitzvah, standing opposite from the Rebbe's Farbrengen on the bleachers. And I noticed this, I see the Rebbe, all of a sudden they're bringing a quart of water to the Rebbe. Nobody said anything, but I was watching this and said, this doesn't make sense. Something is wrong here. And then they brought the Rebbe's chair, the Rebbe should sit down. The Rebbe was always standing by kafas. And 30 seconds later, everybody out. And everybody left 70. Chaos. And this was that first Simchas Torah that the Felmans are there. And they said, all doctors come up to the Rebbe. My father had my three brothers-in-law. He already took them, sent them to my sugar, and he said, I'm going up to see what's doing. He comes to the Rebbe's room. By then, there was other people, Sidim, doctors. My father was a guest. Nobody knew him, but somebody knew him from the Bono colony and said, this is Dr. Felman. So they let him in, and he's there. And the way he told the story, Dr. Felman, my shver, was that the doctors saw what was going on, and they told the Rebbe, you have to go to the hospital. And the Rebbe said no. And another doctor said, you have to go to the hospital. And he said no. These doctors, a lot of them, were visiting or guests one after the other. They just left. If he's not going to go to the hospital, the Rebbe, there's nothing we can do. And another doctor, you have to go to the hospital. And they realized that the Rebbe doesn't want to go. So they figured they have to start bringing different machines and whatever they need to 770. But the doctors, more and more doctors, were still asking the Rebbe, and they were leaving. My shver goes over to the Rebbe and says, why doesn't the Rebbe want to go to the hospital? So the Rebbe said, you see this desk, you see these svarim, you see these walls. It's this desk and these walls and these svarim that heard the cries of Yidden and Chassidim that's going to make me feel better. After my shver, it was the first time he was communicating with the Rebbe. He came to Farbrengen many times, but at that point he realized this is it. The Rebbe's going to stay here, the Rebbe's going to be here, and the Rebbe's going to be okay. For the next 48 hours, he stayed with the Rebbe. And actually, what he said it was about 3 in the morning. He and another doctor were going to be taking shifts. As he put his head down to lie down for a little while, boom, the guy gave a knock, and that was when the Rebbe had the second heart attack. And the Rebbetzin came down a little while later, and she asked, "What's doing?" Rabbi Krinsky was there. My father-in-law was there, Dr. Feldman, and they told the Rebbetzin that they decided that the matzav is critical, and they don't have a choice, but they're gonna sedate the Rebbe and take him to the hospital. So the Rebbetzin asked, "And what does my husband say about that?" So he said, "No, we didn't ask your husband. We can't ask the Rebbe. We have to take him." And the Rebbetzin indicated, "You can't force him. As long as I know my husband, he always was on target and he always knew exactly and was in control of what he was doing." They did not sedate him, as we know. And a little while later, the Rebbetzin came to Rabbi Krinsky and said, "Rabbi Krinsky, you know so many people. Don't you know a good doctor for my husband?" And he had no idea. And the way he says it, all of a sudden he realized that he knew a Dr. Ira Weiss, and he called him, and Dr. Weiss came running right away. Meanwhile, one of the doctors said that the fact that the Rebbetzin said not to sedate the Rebbe literally saved the Rebbe's life. Because if they would sedate him, Chas Shalom, the doctor said the Rebbe would not have made it. After Simchas Torah, my father went back to the Bronx. He had a practice there, but every night between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. he would come and be with the Rebbe. That was his shift, and the Rebbe would come there and they would meet and talk and go over the Rebbe's progress. My in-laws wanted to move to Crown Heights, but the Rebbe always kept on saying no, no, no. They have to stay there. There were different shiurim going on in the house. Different shluchim and chassidim gave different shiurim there. Finally, when all the children had to go, my brother-in-law, Shalom Yitzchak Gedaliah, and my wife had to go to high school, and there was no high school there, then the Rebbe agreed that they could move to Crown Heights. From then and on, my father-in-law, Dr. Felman, literally became the personal physician of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. My in-laws had 4 children. And at some point, and it was many years past, she didn't have another child. The Rebbe gave her a bracha. And she was about to give birth. My shver, Dr. Feldman, was by the Rebbe. A mother-in-law was about to give birth in the hospital. And the Rebbe asks, "So what's doing with your wife?" "Oh, no, they said it's going to be many more hours." So the Rebbe said, "Maybe you should see, maybe it's happening now." "Oh, no, it's going to be a few hours." The Rebbe said, "Maybe you should check it out." He ran out of the room, ran out of the hospital, and sure enough, the mamish gave birth right then and there. So the Rebbetzin actually bought a beautiful dress for my sister-in-law Rivki, who later married Akiva Nussbaum, and my wife brought Rivki to the Rebbetzin so she could see Rivki in this dress. When it came time for Shidduchim, my wife decided to take this opportunity and was discussing with the Rebbetzin different ideas, advice about Shidduchim. And she said that just being there, talking to the Rebbetzin told her everything will turn out all right. I hope so, Baruch Hashem. Meanwhile, at one point, she was speaking to the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin said that maybe your future husband is not here now. Maybe he's still in South Africa or in Morocco. I happened to be in Morocco at that time. About a year and a half later, we go out and we're about to get engaged. It was Yud Shvat Tavshin Memches, and she asked her father if she could go to speak to the Rebbetzin, to tell her personally that they were going to write in that Sunday, Yud Beis Shvat. And she came to the Rebbetzin, and my wife always said, always walking into the Rebbetzin, like others said, was such a malchus, such royalty. And little did she know, my wife, that 12 days later was Chof Beis Shevat. So she's talking, how you doing, how's the family? So then she says to the Rebbetzin, as I came in the past to talk to you about it, I want to tell you that in Mitzvah Hashem we're going to write in to get engaged on Sunday. the Rebbetzin was wishing her Mazel Tov. And she was thinking it's not a Mazel Tov yet. But in hindsight, if you think about it, in a certain way, Yud Shvat Tashmem Ches is when we got engaged. The Rebbetzin wished us Mazel Tov then. Peil Mamish, she kept on talking about we're going to get engaged and the Bacher. So the Rebbetzin, as I'm sure many of you heard this hundreds of times, asks her, what's the name of this Bacher? So she says, Levi Yitzchak Shemtov. So she asks, is this the grandson of Ben Zion Shemtov? Obviously the Rebbetzin knew who was Ben Zion Shemtov, but she knew I was the grandson, but she asked the question. And she said, yeah. And she said, I'm very happy to hear that, because now I know you're going to speak to your children in Yiddish, and that's very important. Sunday was dollars. We wrote into the Rebbe, and a little bit after dollars was over, we got an answer from the Rebbe, Nochain v'yehei v'shah teva mitzlachas askal tzion. I come to the house, the Felman house, Chazan Kala, and a few minutes later the phone rings, and somebody came to tell my wife, the Rebbetzin is on the phone. She would introduce herself as Mrs. Schneerson from President Street. My wife came to the phone. I was standing there, but I didn't hear the Rebbetzin, and she gave her brachas and brachas and brachas. We were supposed to go see together the Rebbetzin, but my father told us that she's not feeling that well, give her a few more days. Meanwhile, that day, when we were there, mamish right then and there, as soon as we got engaged, somebody took a few pictures. I was holding my brother Benzi on my lap, and Sarah was holding Rifki on her lap, on her knee. And a few pictures my father asked if they could develop right away, give them to the Rebbetzin. So he brought them to the Rebbetzin. I didn't know about it, but they gave it to the Rebbetzin. A little while later, a week after Shiva, when they were cleaning up the Rebbe's house, the room, the dresser, so the pictures were on the dresser in their room. So they took the pictures and to move them away. So the Rebbe said, leave those pictures. That made her very happy. Anyway, so I experienced Chof Beis Shevat, the Levaya, the Shiva was, the biggest, the most important thing was the pain. To see that Tsar, to see what the Rebbe was going through was unbelievable. This was the Rebbe's greatest confidant. This was the person closest to the Rebbe, and you could see the Tsar, the pain that Rebbe was going through. On the other hand, the Rebbe kept on saying and pushing V'achayitin aliboy. The Rebbe said Meistes Kenu Chomish and Meistes Chomish. And I was Farbrengen last night. Some people said, how did the Rebbe cope with this? How did the Rebbe deal with this? And the Rebbe dealt with this is by building and doing and making and the names of Chaya Mushka and the pu'ulos that were done on the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. A few days after the Shiva was over, my shver was by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked him, what are the plans for the L'chaim? And those days, I know nobody could relate to it over here, but in those days, Mem Ches, Mem Vav, Zayim Ches, the Rebbe was very pro small l'chaims, and it was done in a house, a few people, for close friends, and that was it. Now it's big catered meals, and we use it because it took. But then it was small, so the plan was to be in my parents' house. My father was here before, and Dr. Felman told the Rebbe it's going to be by the Shemtovs. The Rebbe said, if you're making it smaller because of what happened, Adrabah, you should make it bigger. You should do it in a catering hall. Fine. The Rebbe haste, we do it. So then there was a Crown Palace Hotel, and that had a catering hall, and they rented it. That's where it's going to be. Now it doesn't no longer exist. There's a houses on Crown Street. A few days later, and the Rebbe said, because this would make her happy. A few days later, a call came in from a skidus that there should be real dishes. And a few days later, there was a call there should be live music at the L'chaim. Now, people thought we were crazy. You don't make it in the hall, especially not on the Shleishim, and live music. So we were very clear this was not our idea. This was clearly from the Rebbe. Shavuos, that Shavuos, my Shven asked me if he could come, if I could go to Kesher Bracha with him. He wants to introduce me to the Rebbe. First, I'm thinking, I don't think I have to be introduced to the Rebbe. The Rebbe knows who I am, but Moshe wants to introduce me. How can I say no? So he comes with me. He comes to the Rebbe. The Rebbe always had a smile, and the Rebbe and him always had a very special relationship. So he has a big smile. He says, "This is my future son-in-law." So the Rebbe gave him a bottle of vodka and said, "It's a chonis for the chasana, preparations for the wedding." So we got married Chof Beis Shevat, exactly 4 months later after Chof Beis Shevat. That day, the day of the chuppah, as it was always, I was in the Rebbe's house, and the Rebbe came down the steps and gave me his siddur to daven mincha, as all Chasanim had. That Shabbos, by the Farbrengen, after Chasana, the Rebbe was looking for Dr. Feldman to say l'chaim. Dr. Felman wasn't there, and then I see the Rebbe speaking to Rabbi Levi Goner, and the next thing I see is the Rebbe Goner says, "Who is Dr. Feldman's Eidim?" So I get up and I say l'chaim to the Rebbe. And then the Rebbe asked to other Chasanim and their fathers to say l'chaim. I'll just mention this, that this has become my title, Dr. Feldman's Eidim. Interesting. When my wife went to the Rebbetzins, you Rebbetzin Shemtov, you married Rebbetzin Shemtov Einikel. But for the Rebbe knew my name. The Rebbe knew my Zaydas, my fathers, but my title was Dr. Feldman Zaydim, and that's a wonderful, amazing honor, schus, to have this title, Dr. Feldman Zaydim. So after the Rebbe told all the other Chasanim and the fathers of Sei L'chaim, I believe the Rebbe started Samach to Samach, and they were singing, and then the Rebbe stood up, and everybody stood up, and there was clapping and dancing. This was a tremendous schus. So we're married many years, and we don't have children yet. And at some point, my wife Sarah told me about this discussion she had with the Rebbetzin, when the Rebbetzin said that you're going to speak to your children Yiddish. So I said to her that if the Rebbetzin said that, we're definitely going to have children, Lashon Rabim, plural, and we're going to speak them Yiddish. And it's going to be our own biological children. Took many years. We had our younger siblings get married, have children, more and more. And it was not easy. It was painful. But we knew, without a question, that if the Rebbetzin said you're going to speak to your children Yiddish, we're going to speak to our children Yiddish. And Baruch Hashem, it took 13 years. And Baruch Hashem, we had twins, Chaim Mushka and Menachem Mendel. And 3 years later, Baruch Hashem had Yosef. And yes, we speak to them in Yiddish. So I know most of you over here speak Yiddish, and in Rebbe Hashem, you should speak to your children in Yiddish, because that's very important according to the Rebbetzin. One of the other things I want to say is that and it's spoken before about the Rebbetzin giving brachas. The fact that the Rebbetzin told my wife they're going to speak to children in Yiddish. This is something that we saw so many times with the bouquet that for the 50th anniversary, when the Sheikh Chabad brought to the Rebbetzin, and they brought an envelope. So the Gabbai, whoever it was, brought the envelope to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "Give it to her because it has her name on it, and she could also bench them." My Shver says he once asked the Rebbe, "What's the difference between the Rebbe's brachas and the Rebbetzins brachas?" So the Rebbe said, "Her brachas, you don't need a keli. For mine, you do." I will say this, after the Shiva, as we know, the Rebbe Bechlal was very, very strong as far as paying every doctor. We had a doctor who came to us in Chabad in Riverdale, a doctor, I forget his name, and he took out of his wallet a $100 bill. He says, "I got this $100 bill from the Rebbe when I saw the Rebbe as a patient." The Rebbe always would pay every single doctor. Paid my father-in-law, paid every doctor. The Rebbe never wanted that anybody should feel they came and didn't get paid. I don't know if the Rebbe told this following thing to anybody else, But after Shiva, the Rebbe told my Shver, Dr. Felman, he said, I want you to know I am forever indebted to you. Even though the Rebbe paid him, forever indebted to you. And us as a family, we always try to use that debt to ask the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin for brachas. Before Chav Zayin Adar, Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe told my father-in-law, and Regrona was there when the Rebbe said it to him a few times. A few times, the Rebbe said, remember, you are my doctor. Remember, you are my doctor. The Matseva of my Shver is here. And if you look at Matseva, it says, the Rebbe, Amaloi Tiskid, Sh'ata Arei Fishali. Many of you heard and know my Shver, so I can't talk about my Shver without giving even one Gematria. My Shver is full of Gematrias. So he said many times by the word Kevesh for the ram going up to the Mizbeach, the reason why there wasn't steps because of Tznius. So he said Kevesh is Chof Beis Shevat, and he said if you think about the Rebbetzin, she was the epitome of Tznius, modesty, behind the scene. The emes is that all of us here, and all the Chassidim, and all the Yidden, the whole world really, has to thank the Rebbetzin, the fact that the Rebbe was our Rebbe. Because we all know the story that Tafshin Yud, Tafshin Yud, so Yud Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe refused, not only refused, but they gave the Rebbe a letter of Askashus. My Zayder Menzion was very involved in that, many other Chassidim involved, and they gave the Rebbe, and they come into the Rebbe's room, and they give the Rebbe a list of everybody. You know what the Rebbe would do? They would go like this. They would literally threw it away. The Rebbe didn't want to hear of it. He was against it. He didn't want it. The end was, the Rebbe Chaim Mushke told the Rebbe, "Was et sein mit der 30 Jahr, was mein Tate getan mit Chassidim? What's going to be the future of Chassidim?" And the Rebbe Chaim Mushke knew that the Rebbe, as a Rebbe, means there's no time for family, there's no time at home. But the Rebbe knew that the world needed the Rebbe, Chassidim needed the Rebbe. And as we all know, the Rebbe would have Yechidus till sometimes 4, 5, 6 a.m. Farbrengen, V'kesha Bracha, to who knows what time. And when the Rebbe came home, who was there greeting the Rebbe at the door with a smile, welcoming the Rebbe? The Rebbetzin. Can we even imagine what that meant for the Rebbe? A normal wife, your husband is home late, you go to sleep. I mean, just don't wake me up when you get into the room. Don't turn the light on. I'm sleeping. For the Rebbetzin, she was there. Every moment for the Rebbe, she was a partner with the Rebbe in every single thing the Rebbe did for us. There was one particular time, I don't remember the exact detail of the story, where somebody came, I think, late at night and knocked on the door of the Rebbetzin and apologized to the Rebbetzin. I am so sorry that we came middle of the night. And the Rebbetzin said to him, don't you know that my husband and I, we are here just to help others, just to be there for others. I want to conclude with going back to the story where a little boy once comes to the Rebbetzin and asks the Rebbetzin, where are the children? Now, we went through this for 13 years and have children. Can't even imagine how the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin getting a question like this, which are, where are the children? And the Rebbetzin says, the Chassidim in Psalm 70 are our children. When Chof Beis Shevat, one of the first things the Rebbe did was, when they starting about the Levaya, the Rebbe said, "Man darf mit dir sein, I think the Kinder or the Shluchim, gleich." And if you think about it, today's Chof Beis Shevat, it was mamish this time, they were on the way to the hospital or just got to the hospital. Rabbi Krinsky was driving the car. The night before, actually, they wanted to take the Rebbetzin to the hospital. She said no, because the night before was Yechidus, And she said she cannot go to the hospital because the Rebbe won't give Yechidus, and the Yidden and Chassidim are waiting for that Yechidus. So they went the next night. Rabbi Levi was there. My Shver, Dr. Felman, I think, was in the car. I don't know if he was in the back or in the front. He was there with the Rebbetzin, and I think Rabbi Shalom Beganzer was in the car. Stern was not in the car. Mrs. Sternberg was not in the car. Oh, she was there already, and Mrs. Sternberg actually made sure that Rebbetzin should not see her because she was afraid. Am I right? She was afraid that the Rebbe was going to say, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be home with the kids." Anyway, they're on the car on the way there, and the Rebbetzins' discussion with my father-in-law, talking about hours, was all about how's the young couple, how's the kala, what's doing with the sheitel, what's doing with getting ready for the wedding. That's all she could talk about. She must have been in tremendous pain, but she was talking about and seeing what's doing with this young couple. So 34 years ago, mamish right now. And many of you, all of you are bachim here for sure, were not there then, didn't know the Rebbe then, and most of you did not meet the Rebbe. So it's very easy. Not only it's easy, it's the natural thing is to say the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were like another generation. It's so far gone. It doesn't really relate to me. I don't really relate to them. So I'm mamish reminded. It was Tav Shemem Hey. I was in one of the shluchim in Casablanca, and it was right. It was Tammuz, toughest of Tesvav Tammuz when this whole thing with the Sfarim came out. And we were 5-6 hours ahead, so it's now maybe 6:30, 7:30 in the morning. The Farbrengen started about 3:30 in the morning for us. And the Rebbe was speaking against the fact that somebody took away Tzvarim that we didn't know, most people didn't know it was the Rebbe's nephew. And a little water. So the Rebbe was saying that the person is saying that the Fidik Rebbe is gone already 35 years. And I remember this mamish in the house in Morocco, Chof Beis Shevat Farbrengen. Wie kämen sagen, als nicht da, so 35 Jahre, was ist aktiv, mehr und mehr und mehr. The Rebbe was so offended that somebody could say about the Fidik Rebbe, he's gone 35 years already. So now we're 34 years. And how does the Rebbe tell us to view it? That the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin are more active with us and more connected to us. More and more every year. As we know, every year there's aliyahs and neshama. But aliyahs and neshama doesn't mean that the neshama goes higher and higher. Rather, as the Rebbe told us, and Alter Rebbe says, the neshama is connected to us more and more, to all those that are connected to the Rebbe and Rebbetzin. And as we know, the Rebbe spoke many times of Farbrengens, the Gemara Mazare b'chaim, afu b'chaim. So the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, they're really depending on us. When they say on us, specifically all Chassidim, and more importantly, the young generation. The young generation of Bachrim, who did not see the Rebbe, who were born after Gimel Tammuz. The Zare b'chaim, when you are living the way the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin wants you to live, then what you're doing is you're making it afhu and he b'chaim. They are alive. So it's not just about you, your own personal life, what you do, what you don't do. You get up, you learn, you don't learn. No. The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin are dependent on you. They're thinking of you. Just as the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin thought of us before, now there's no gvul, now there's no limit. And the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin are thinking about us, looking to us, connecting to us, and the Eivisha should bench us. It should be a kutzav shechni that this Chof Beis Shevat should not finish as the yard site, but it should be the day that we go together with the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. Amen.